So now we move along to Strawman Two, the follow-up, obviously, to Strawman One. This is a summary, by the way. I mean, over the years, I'll give you more information on that, on these Strawman cases, but it's convoluted, and I don't want to delve too far. But notice this: when the government got involved with combating organized, the Justice Department got involved with combating organized crime. Let's say it was 1962. Robert Kennedy's AG. He ordered all these guys out onto the streets. It was so bad in Chicago, the agents had to hire Sandy Smith, the driver, who was a local photographer, great photographer, who would roam the streets with them and say, "Well, that's Cerrone, that's Humphreys, that's so." They could have found the files, I suppose, in the IRS or something, but they didn't. Now, move ahead to 1978, and the government is sophisticated in these cases, and they've got sometimes minor players down. So they've got listening devices at places where, and a lot of these devices they had, by the way, they weren't legal, but they weren't going to use the recordings in a court of law. So that was a fine, dumb line that they used. Something else, aside from the growing sophistication, what you need to know is this. There's a lot of criticism of the FBI. I'm not a fan these days of the FBI because, they've become political. Maybe we need to break them up a little bit, take certain agencies out, and just refine them to a few simple things where we can keep a better eye on those guys. Secret police state is something we don't need. But bear in mind, people say, well, the Hoover didn't get into. That's not true. This is D.C., man. This is believe me, believe me. You can take this to the bank. There has never been an original thinker in D.C. There never will be. There isn't now. I'm not talking about the elected officials. I'm talking about the hundreds of thousands of people who work in the government. They just, they show up, they put in their 20 years, and they retire, and they get a second government job. There's nobody here that's going to say in 1955, hey, let's look into organized crime. Let's get the whole thing going. What they do in this town is they follow orders. They follow orders. Look at the history of the FBI. Pay attention to it. So they went into the red raids because they were told to go into the red raids. And they said, well, we've got to go get independent bank robber gangsters. You know what? You can do anything you want in America. You can't rob a goddamn bank. That's they sent them down on that. In the 40s, it was the Nazis. In the 50s, it was Red Raids Part 2 when we had to combat communism. And the reason was we were a nation obsessed with communism from, late 40s through the 60s. I mean, so they just followed the dictates of what they're told to do. There's a lot of guys in charge when they come in. There's the president, the attorney general, it goes all the way down the chain. So Hoover was not, believe me, he was literally born on Capitol Hill, on the street behind the Capitol building. The guy was an inside player. He wasn't going to do anything like rush off the scene and say, let's go hunt down mafiosos unless he's told to hunt down mafiosos. Let's not hunt down communists unless he's told to. Now, what he did once he had the orders, two different things. But believe me, the FBI follows the dictates of whoever is sitting in the White House, who follows the dictates largely of what the American people want. So, with that said, Strawman Two, the second case of the skimming of Las Vegas casinos by the mob, involved mostly members of the Chicago syndicate. The case was drawn together in '78, as I said, when Nick Civella he called Anthony Chiavola, a Chicago cop, and he told him Chiavola was their go-between. He told him he wanted to set up a meeting at his house with somebody from the mob, Chicago mob. So the FBI intercepted the phone call, and they went and they bugged Chiavola's home where the meeting was held. The meeting revealed that Civella was trying to buy out the Chicago family's interest in the Stardust and the Fremont casinos for 10 million cash. The Chicago representatives they rejected the bid, they feeling that the skim they would collect far more than that over the years, and so 10 million wasn't something. In their case, something to sneeze at. It didn't matter. Anyway, all of this is recorded on tape. They're rejecting a cash offer. I mean, so he's going to have to answer to the IRS. Where the hell are you getting $10 million for a sale you're not going to register, which is also illegal because it involves a casino? And the Chicago guys are saying, we don't need your money. We'll steal more than that. So, by the way, it wasn't just stealing that made the skim so great. It was a lot. They could wash money. That was a lot of other things they could do with that. So during the Strawman Two case, the Cleveland Mafia boss, Angelo Lonardo, he switches and he testifies on behalf of the government. The government already has a really strong case, and now with this guy ratting everybody out, it's ridiculously strong. On January 21, 1986, Joey Aiuppa, Jackie Cerrone, Joe Lombardo, Angelo Di La Pietra, all the Chicago guys were convicted, along with Frank Balistieri of Milwaukee. So again, we'll do something more detailed about this, but now you've got a summary, okay? All right.
Good evening. The government has made a major move against organized crime. A federal grand jury has charged 15 men with skimming profits from casinos in Las Vegas and distributing the money to organized crime interests. It's been described as one of the most far-reaching indictments ever handed down by a grand jury, and the men named are described by federal agents as the who's who of organized crime in the Midwest. We begin with Robin Groth, who is in Las Vegas.
Anthony Spilatro, arrested early this morning, is alleged to be the link between Las Vegas and organized crime in Chicago. In Kansas City, 3 more arrested, including reputed organized crime leaders Carl the Cork Civella and Carl Tuffy DeLuna. In Chicago, 6 more charged, including 3 who are alleged to be the organized crime hierarchy in that city: Joey Aiuppa, Jackie Cerrone, and Joey the Clown Lombardo. They are charged with the hidden control and management of 4 Las Vegas casinos and the distribution of almost $2 million illegally skimmed from casino profits. Skimming is the siphoning of unreported money, in this case to alleged organized crime families in the Midwest.
So we have a significant amount of money that has gone into the hands of organized crime that has not reached the tax coffers of either state or federal authorities.
The skimming operation occurred between 1974 and 1979 at the Marina, the Hacienda, the Fremont, and the Stardust casinos, all operated by the now-defunct Argent Corporation, with funding from the Teamsters Central States Pension Fund under the direction of alleged organized crime leaders. If convicted on all counts, those indicted today could receive up to $80,000 in fines and 40 years in prison. Robin Groth, ABC News, Las Vegas.
This is Kenneth Walker in Washington. Government officials call today's indictment their biggest case in recent years against high-level organized crime activities.
That's why this indictment today, with the people involved, is really a major step forward. People who have walked the streets almost with an arrogant attitude of we're above it, you can't get us, have now been what you might call brought to the heels of justice.
Those indicted form a virtual who's who of alleged organized crime figures in the Midwest. Joseph Aiuppa, said to be a top crime boss in Chicago. Frank Balistieri, the alleged boss of the Milwaukee mob. And Carl Angelo DeLuna, one of the most feared organized crime operatives in the Kansas City area. Casinos in Las Vegas, nominally owned by Alan Glick and the Argent Corporation, brought these men together. And, according to the indictment, the Teamster Union's billion-dollar Central States Pension Fund provided the money. This is the first time the pension fund has been linked to the alleged scam in Las Vegas. According to sources, the mobsters used $90 million in pension fund money to buy a hidden interest in the casinos. Their plan was to skim so much money from profits that the casinos would have to go bankrupt, thus allowing the pension fund to assume direct control of the casinos. The indictment is the largest alleged example of the mob's attempt to penetrate Las Vegas casinos. And with more than $200 million in Teamsters pension funds invested in other Las Vegas casinos, officials say the investigation will continue to see just how deeply the mob and the Teamsters may be involved. Kenneth Walker, ABC News, Washington.
You guys okay?